All right, German Historical Society, January 27th. We're doing an interview with Mr. Richard Muelheisen, and we're going to find out a lot about the history of German from a man who knows a lot and whose family grew up here in German. And we'll start
Yes,
by asking
2019.
you a couple of questions about your family, your mother and father, and your grandparents. Tell us what you can remember about them.
Okay, on my mother's side, well, I only go to her side because my father's from Lancaster,
Okay.
so you wouldn't know anybody down there. So on my mother's side, her father was George Edmonds, and he and his brother James Edmonds owned some of that mountain up there. But George Edmonds and my grandmother was a Snyder from Heart Lake. Her father was Levi Snyder, and her name was Olive Snyder, and she married George Edmonds, and he and his father-in-law owned the Hotel Windsor, but it wasn't called that then. It was the Farmers Hotel.
Farmers Hotel. Yeah, that was built by Nicholson.
Yeah, that was Farmers Hotel, and they were kind of in the racehorse business too. They had a couple of harness horses they raced at Honesdale Fair and that. And George Edmonds, when he married Olive Snyder, they went to Canada on their honeymoon, and they stayed at the Windsor Hotel up there. So when they came home, they changed the name to the Hotel Windsor, and that's when they built the balconies out over the front, and there was one on the side too. On Rushbrook Street, there was a balcony at one time. And then my grandmother, who was a real entrepreneur, she also built that big building across Rushbrook Street, that big concrete building.
White Elephant.
Not the White Elephant, she built that too. But she built that big building on the corner, that big stone building.
Okay, the one that was in
In
front
your
of the
days,
White
it was a dress factory, but it used to be an ice cream parlor on the first floor, was owned by Edmonds's. And my cousin, who we thought was our aunt, because my grandparents raised her, Eleanor McGee. Some people remember Eleanor. She also worked in the Miller's Five and Dime store, but she had a soda shop there with the iron back chairs and the little tables and the marble, just like Grace Collins had. And on the second floor,
what was the name of that? McGee? Was it McGee?
it was Eleanor McGee.
Oh, that was the name of the ice cream place?
Yeah, that's what she called it, Eleanor McGee. And the second floor, I remember, was apartments, and the third floor was Dr. Finnegan's dentistry shop, his office, and the Bell Telephone Company. The girls were up there plugging in. In fact, when they tore that down a few years ago, they had a hell of a time tearing it down because my grandmother had it built out of steel and concrete. So they had an awful time tearing that thing down. But then she built the White Elephant. Those things were built. So she went to New York City about once a year by train. The trains used to go right to New York City. And she'd go to the building shows. So that when she built the White Elephant, that thing was built with, already had BX cable in it. It already had copper tubing in it, which people didn't even know about then. She had everything brand new. And the heating there were great big vents in the floor in the living rooms. And they were hot air.
That's what was in my house, yeah.
Yeah, hot air. All those apartments, and the apartments in the basement, we had a full basement. And the basements, they all were connected. In case of fire, if there was a fire in the first one, you could run through the basements and get out the last one. And on the top, on the roof, was a flat roof, and on the roof was where the women hung their wash. They had steps, every apartment had steps going up to the roof. Every apartment had a kitchen and a pantry, and then a staircase downstairs, and then there was a dining room and the living room and the sun parlor. You know that part that sticks out in front there? I can remember the sun because I was born in that. I was born in the last one up Rushbrook Street, the last house up. I was born upstairs there. And I remember Christmases there because the Christmas tree would be in that sunroom. And my grandparents always had a Sunday dinner. And we used to go up there for Sunday dinner. And we lived there until 1938. I was 3 years old when we moved down to the main street here in Germany. They bought Joe Quinn's house. Joe Quinn was a pharmacist, and that was his fancy house there. And They got kind of went upstairs. They got a little bit better money, I guess, because they bought that. And that was a great place, that house. And we had trees in the back. We had a good time there. And John Hellock John Hellock got killed in an automobile accident. I don't know if you knew about that.
No, he had the pharmacy.
He built that was his, first it was Graves' Pharmacy.
Yeah.
Dr. Graves' Pharmacy. And then John Hellock bought it. And he got killed, I guess, with his girlfriend over in Pike County. Went over a bank. They were out drinking and he went over a cliff. And he got killed. That was, and we were still living up there, so that was probably 38 maybe. In fact, I can remember when Superman first came out in comics, 1938, because we were living there then. And across the street from the White Elephant was Langman's store. It was a great big store. And Alvin Young worked there. And behind the Hotel Windsor was a big barn. And when the state police used I don't know if you guys knew, but the state police had a barracks there in the Hotel Windsor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They had 3 troopers. My dad was the first one, and then there was Silent Smith, they called him, and then a guy named, a German guy named Hess. A guy named Hess. Just the 3 troopers. And they had 3 horses there. And they were from B Troop, so the horses' names all started with a B. My father's horse was Burglar, and the other one was Bandit, and I forgot what the third one was now. But they were there, and my mother had 5 horses of her own.
How far did they have to patrol?
All the way to Pike County and way up Susquehanna County.
Wow.
On horseback.
On horseback, yeah. What they did was when they made their circuit all the way over to Pike County, they would stop in Carbondale and go to the post office, get its stamps that they were there, and talk to anybody that had a problem. And then they go on and they go to Honesdale and Holly and all the way to Pike County. And every town they got their stamp made. Well, my dad loved the writing, and Silent Smith didn't like writing, but he liked doing the typing and the telephone stuff. So my dad would take his trip, because my dad liked to take those trips. And my dad told me some funny stories too, because he rode out to Snyder's farm on his state police horse, and he got off to talk to old Jim Snyder, and they were sitting on the stone wall there eating an apple, and the horse walked away. And the horse took off running and came all the way to German. And of course they were all dirt roads. Rushbrook Road was a dirt road. Yeah. And he said how he said, I used to catch that horse, I'm going to shoot him. But my father and my grandfather had died. He died in 1950 in pneumonia. George Edwards.
Do you remember?
No, I don't remember him.
No.
I wasn't born to 35. But Lawrence Alt was my step-grandfather. And he was a horseshoer in town. Him and Dick Parker, they were horseshoers. So my grandfather got in the old car they had, and he drove up to meet my dad down there. But they had a lot of enjoyment there. I told you about that bar up along Rushbrook. Did you ever go and look at that white spot?
No, I haven't got a chance to get up there. In the springtime, I'm going up with the metal detector.
There was a guy named Frenchco that had a bar along Rushbrook Road. When you go up Rushbrook, when you go past where that concrete wall was, you'll see a kind of a white spot. Well, the road wasn't nearly as wide as it is now. It was a dirt road. So he got plenty of room in the back. So they had a bar, but when Prohibition came in, he still kept selling booze. And when my dad was in the state police, he and Silent Smith had to go and raid the guy. They had to raid him. He got arrested for bootlegging or something. And across from there, and across the Rushbrook Creek, there used to be there's a little bridge there now where a guy has a log cabin built.
Yeah.
There used to be a big bridge went across there, and there was a slaughterhouse on that side, on the other side. And it was run by two ladies. I don't know I never found what their names were, but my mother called them the Two Sisters Slaughterhouse. And all the guts and junk and everything went right in the creek, right in the water. That's how they did it in those days, I guess. And the dirt and the road, Rushbrook Road, didn't go where it goes now. It went up, and if you go up there, well, now when there's no leaves on the trees, you can see a little bit of a road up
Right,
to the left.
right where the gas plant is, there's a road that goes up there. Is that where it starts up?
Where the gas plant is.
Yeah, there's a little gas plant right at the Y where you turn to go to Route 6.
Oh no, further up, way further up.
Okay.
Yeah, farther up. And that road went up. That used to be the main road there. And those houses that were built there, like old Charlie. What was Charlie's name? Can't remember his last name now. Their houses, when I was a kid, their houses, the backside faced Rushbrook now. But the front of the house faced the old Rushbrook Road.
Okay.
It went up around there, and it went behind those houses that are there now. And it came out where what's his name? Whitco's lived there now. There's a house right there at the bottom of Mile Hill.
Okay.
It came behind them, and it crossed over where it, and then down, and it went by Keklax.
Oh, yeah. Behind Keckler?
Yeah, it went behind Keklax.
There's a bridge,
And
an
then-
old stone bridge there.
Yes, on the other side there.
Scully.
That's where the road.
Yes.
Scully Keklax. Yeah, Scully. That's where the Rushbrook Road really went. And
Where did it come out up by the Rippon's Corners?
it came up before that because it came up right before Stanley Mellett's house. Yeah,
Sharp turn is?
yeah, and Frank Snyder's house, and then in fact where where Keklax lived when they built that newer house up there. That road was already in front of where it is now. And Hart Lake was called Mud Pond because they didn't name it Hart Lake until years later. It was called. You look at an old map; it's Mud Pond on there.
It's a natural lake?
Yeah, Hart Lake is a natural lake, and it was just a mud pond, I guess, at the time. But somebody picked. Well, then my grandmother also built a hotel there, where that Bible conferences.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was a dance hall. She built that.
Up on the,
On the left.
On the
Oh,
left, yeah,
left-hand
that great
side.
big,
Yeah.
where they call it Comanche Camp now for them.
yeah.
She built that. That was a dance hall.
Oh,
And Bing Crosby sang there in 1928.
Really?
He wasn't that famous yet. And one of the Dorseys, I don't remember which one my mother said. The Dorseys were just getting to be known then. They were just young guys. One of the Dorseys played there. And I met a detective, when I was a cop, I met a detective down in Scranton. They used to come up from Old Forge. When he was a young guy, he'd come up from Old Forge on the trolley. He'd get on the trolley in Scranton, he'd come up, and then they'd get off in German here, and they get a buggy and drive up to the hotel, up to there for the dances. 10 cents to get in for them. And he said, that place would be crowded. I can remember when I was a kid sliding on that dance floor because they
It's the
oiled
same
it.
building?
Huh?
Same building?
Oh yeah, same building. It's there. It's still there yet today. In fact, I got a tour of it a couple years ago. The people that own it now, I stopped to see them, and the guy showed me around. And that big dance floor is still there. And when we were kids, we used to like to run and slide on it in the stocking feet because it was waxed. You know, they always waxed it.
Yeah.
And in German here, now next to the Hotel Windsor, my grandfather was also on the council. George Edmonds was a councilman here. And besides the Hotel Windsor, they owned that big brick building that was next to that. And in one half of that was the movie theater, and the other half had been a store. But the Casey brothers from Archibald back in the 50s, they had a restaurant in there, and there was a hamburger joint. And in those days, German had about 6 or 8 hamburger joints. Old Jim Meehan's. Did you ever hear anybody talk about Jim Meehan? He was a character. But I can remember Jim Meehan. Bill Westington and his wife, they had a hamburger joint where
doing an interview now with
let me see what's there now.
Okay.
The one insurance company.
Brenzel.
Huh?
Brenzel.
No, the one before
Yeah,
that.
there's nobody in-
The other one, the
Yeah,
Brenzel's,
there's
the
nobody
next to
in the driveway.
Brenzel's.
It's an idea.
The guy from
Down
Archibald.
at the Vermont, yeah.
Hey, I wonder what the heck's the name of his. Well, anyway, that was the Bill Maher restaurant, Billy and Mary Westington.
Yeah,
And
you can park in the parking
where
lot where the driveway
Brenzel's is
behind
now, that first it was back in the early 30s and 40s. It was a guy named Hawkins had a grocery store there, and then when I was a kid, it was Jim Connors. Jim Connors had a grocery store in there, and you could go by. And in those days, they used to put all the fruit right outside, and the baskets were tipped out, you know. And up on Rushbrook Street, across from where Frank LaRosa's store was now, across the street was the original store.
Yeah.
And right by your alleyway
Yeah,
there.
where they had a jewelry store there later on.
Did they? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, what's his name, Prokowski had it.
Well, that was, when I was a kid, that was Frank LaRosa's. And he had a striped awning that came out on there, you know, and everybody shopped in there because he always had fresh fruit and everything.
Is that where the guy blew himself up? In front
The
of
guy
him?
blew himself, the hermit that blew himself up, we used to see him come down into town about every once in a while, and we were kids, we were scared to death of him. Because he wore an old ragged brown coat with a rope for a belt, and he was all whiskers and everything. And he didn't talk to anybody. He came down the street grumbling. We used to run when we saw him. We were afraid of him. He was probably harmless for kids, you know, and scared.
Yeah.
With
But
the
we were
dynamite,
home.
He wasn't harmless, I guess.
Yeah, we were home eating supper one night, and he was living up there where those foundations are,
Yeah.
and they, across the creek. He was living in one of them. One was the mule barn, and one was the munitions plant for the mines.
He lived in a mule barn?
He lived in the munition plant. And we were eating supper. My dad was the police chief, and by that time we were living here on Washington Avenue. And there was a big boom. And my dad says, I wonder what the hell that was. And we kept eating, and then somebody came banging on the door. He says, hurry up, the hermit blew himself up. So my dad had to go up, he said there was nothing left. I mean, just pieces of it.
What was his
But he
name?
blew himself up. He put dynamite all around his waist and turned it and set it off.
Do you know his name?
I didn't know his name. I didn't know his name.
Was
You
your
know,
mother
here-
born in Germany?
Well, yeah, my mother was born in Germany.
Where did she live in Germany? Before when they built the White Oak?
They lived in the Hotel Windsor.
Okay.
And when my father and mother got married at first, they lived there first before they moved across to the White Oak. There was apartments up there too.
Yeah.
And the name of Hotel Windsor was taller than it is now.
Yeah, it was 3 stories.
Yeah, the top story burned off back in the 60s. And let's see, they had an apartment up there. I forgot how long. Well, I was born in the White Elephant area, and that was in '35, so they had moved over there by then. My 2 sisters, Dorothy and Jackie. I don't think you knew
Yeah.
Dorothy. I don't know Jackie.
Yeah.
They were born in the Hotel Windsor. They lived there then.
And you said your father came from Lancaster?
My dad came from Lancaster. He was he got out of the army in the First World War. He was a sergeant in the artillery, and when the war was over, he came to back to Lancaster, and he got on the Lancaster police force. He was a cop in Lancaster, and he and his buddy, he had a buddy named Jim Crawford in Lancaster, who were both on the police force, and they both applied to the Pennsylvania State Police and the Canadian Mounties. They were both gung-ho. They wanted to be cops. Well, my dad got called to the state police, but Jim Crawford didn't. So my dad became a state trooper.
Was that the Jim Crawford that moved to Germany?
No.
Okay.
Jim Crawford got, right after my dad got out of the academy, well, it wasn't an academy then, it was someplace out in the boondocks, where the game commission trains now. It wasn't like it is in Hershey. And when he got out of there, his buddy Jim Crawford got called to the Northwest Mounted Police in Canada.
Oh.
And my dad stopped to visit him in 1952. They were up there on a trip, and they stopped to visit him. And they were 1 week too late because he had just retired and moved to Florida. So my dad missed him. But
So when did your father come here? He came here.
He came here in
to get
1923.
the job with the state
Yeah.
police here.
Yeah, the state police sent him here.
Okay.
And he was stationed in Wyoming. Well, all 3 of them were really stationed. But that was this Hotel Windsor was like a satellite. I don't know what they called it.
So they had their own separate building behind it, or were
No,
they stationed in the
they're
Windsor?
stationed in the Windsor. They're
Floor.
on the second floor. They had rooms in the Windsor,
Okay.
and they kept their horses in that big barn in the back. I remember that barn in the back. That was a dandy barn. And the horses were downstairs, like the farmers would have the barn in the bottom. And up on the flooring part was the hay and all that stuff, but they also had some wagons up there. And after the horses, when I was a kid and the horses that were all gone, the people that owned the Windsor at that time, they bought the Windsor from the bank, I guess. Because my mother-in-law, or my grandmother, I mean, she lost all those properties at the stock market crash because she was building on each one. You know, she'd pay one off or get the equity in one and borrow the money to build the other one. That's what she was doing. And all of a sudden, boom! You know, and the bank wanted their money back, and she lost. I think the white elephant was the only one she kept, was able to keep, and the one at Heart Lake, the big dance hall at Heart Lake, lasted until when I was a kid. She still had it, but then they finally took that
So
too.
the one at Heart Lake is the Harmony Heart Camp?
Harmony Heart Camp. That
That's
was my.
all
That was
back
it.
then.
That was it. Huh?
What was the name of it back then? It was a dance hall.
Oh, let me think. I heard the name. It was Heart Lake something. Heart Lake wasn't a hotel. I don't think. Heart Lake something. But it's a big place, and you go through it, and it had two stories. There was rooms upstairs, so maybe it was a hotel.
Yeah. When did they put the basketball courts in there? Was that there?
Oh,
then?
no, God, no, that was way.
Because I played there when I was a kid.
Yeah, but that was way later. That was when the Baptist started.
After the cart.
Yeah.
Okay. You went to school, and did your mother go to school here?
Oh yeah, my mother went to school here. She graduated. She only went. She skipped. In those days, they used to skip grades. If you could pass the test, you go to the next grade. I think she graduated with a certificate, I think, in 10th grade.
Wow.
And she was pretty smart. Not like me.
And so she went to the German high school here.
Yeah, she went to school here.
Yeah.
And George Edmonds, actually, his family, when they came from Wales, they migrated into Mayfield. He was actually from Mayfield, but they were from Wales. So my mother was part Welsh and part English, and the Snyders were German. So I'm all mixed up.
I always thought the Edmondses were Irish.
No.
Every Edmonds I know.
Yeah, I
is
know, me too. They're not Irish. None of them are Irish, actually. Irish. They all became Catholics because my grandfather George and his brother James and the rest of their siblings were they were. Their father married an Irish girl from the bush named, let's see, there used to be a Coptic there with that name. Brady. They married an Irish girl named Brady, and she made all the kids Catholics. So all of their offspring. So the Edmondses that we knew, Fort Edmonds and all, they're all Catholic. Well, they were actually Welsh.
If I knew that, I would have brought that up to him.
But their grandmother was Irish.
Okay.
And my mother said she was a beautiful redhead and mean as hell.
That's the Irish in it, right?
But my dad, no, my dad's father was from an Amish family, but my dad's grandfather married out of the cult and got kicked out. They were no longer Amish, but they were German.
Mennonites and Amish.
Yeah, they were originally, but his mother came from Ireland too. His mother came right over on the boat from Ireland. She was, what do they call those? Servant.
Indentured servant.
Indentured servant. She came over with Admiral Hartley and his family. She was their nanny over there over in England or in Ireland. And when he came over, they brought her with them. So after her 2 years were up, she was free. And I never understood how this happened, but my dad said that his father spoke kind of like a gutter language of German and broken English. And his mother spoke Gaelic. And he said maybe that's why they never had a fight, because they didn't understand. But they had 6 kids. So my dad's family was all Catholic except him. He was a Catholic to begin, but he had an argument with the Catholic priest when he was. My dad was one of those guys that wanted to know everything. If you told him something, he'd want to know, well, tell me about it. Where'd you get that from and how's it work? Well, he asked the priest a couple questions. The priest said, it's none of your business. You just do what I tell you. My dad said, the hell with this. And he went home and never went back.
And how did you become a Methodist?
Well, I was an Episcopalian. My mother and father figured with all of us 6 kids, they better join the church. So they joined the Episcopal Church. And I grew up down there. I was an acolyte there. Me and Jimmy Allen and my 2 brothers, and I think Red Jones and a few others, we were acolytes. Well, as soon as I got old enough, I got out of there. That was too, I wasn't happy with that anyway. Besides, I wasn't that religious at the time. But when I married Bonnie Mellon, they were Methodists. And after we started having kids, she always went to church, but I didn't. I finally started going to church. And then when Art Davis came around here, he converted me really well.
How about Bonnie's family? What do you remember?
Bonnie's family, They were Welsh and English, and her mother's side were Welsh and English. Her mother was an usher. Her maiden name was Usher. And her grandmother's name was Jones. Margaret Usher. Her mother's name was Jones, and her father's name was Davy Jones.
Welsh.
They were Welsh. They were Welsh.
Don't get any more Welsh than Davy Jones.
Yeah, I know. They were Welsh. I used to have pictures of them too, but since nobody wanted, I don't even know if I have any. But I'm gonna look when I go home because I have a box full of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I got a whole box full of stuff, and some of the people I don't know who they are, but some I do know. So she was then Utter comes in there too. Remember when I Utter from Jimmy Utter?
Yeah.
Well, he was a cousin too because one of the Usher girls married another. Ducky got it. So they were all related. But that family there was Eddie Mellon came from Danville, and his family was part Indian. Whatever tribe was down there, I don't even know. There was still a reservation. I remember he said. Eddie Mellon's mother's mother was an Indian from some tribe in the Danville area. Whoever was there at the time.
Who was down there?
Well, there was a lot of them. The Nanticokes, the Shoshones came up for everything. Came from they got chased out of Florida, and everybody migrated this way,
Yeah.
and then everybody from here migrated that way.
Yeah.
So any one of the tribes from down south could have came there and settled.
Yeah, nobody could ever tell me. In fact, Eddie Mellon himself didn't know what the name of it was.
The Susquehannocks were farther north. The Iroquois were
That's
up
what-
here, so it would have been one of the southern tribes. I could probably look it up and tell you, but
Bonnie said one time that she thought she heard they was Susquehanna.
the Susquehannocks wrapped around
But it was only-
down to Wilkes-Barre, and,
Yeah, it
and
was only
that's
something
as
she
far-
heard. She didn't know. Nobody
They
knew.
were the big Indians. They were
But my
taller and bigger than
Bonnie's grandmother, Mellon, they lived up on Lincoln Avenue. She looked a little Indian. She had an Indian look to her. But his father, Eddie Mellon's father, he was Pennsylvania Dutch too. They were German.
And you went to school in German, right?
Eddie?
You,
Oh, me?
yeah.
I started in German. I went as far as 10th grade in German, but the beginning of my junior year, some guy, I won't mention his name because his family's still here, but he was always dressed up, wore bow ties and everything, and he was a pompadour, and I wore blue jeans and cowboy boots and plaid shirts, and I had a horse. I kept it in my dad's garage. And every day I come home for lunch, I'd ride the horse up and down the alley a bit. Well, I realized I probably didn't smell like a horse, too. But he came walking in the library one day. It was our first class that day was study hall with the coach Evans, Tom Evans. And I was looking at a book, and he walked in with two girls, one on each arm, and laughing at him. And he walked by me and says, "Phew, Muelheisen, don't you ever take a bath?" And the girls started laughing, and I could feel my ears burn. I got up and I hit him, and I broke his nose, and the blood flew all over his white. He was screaming and crying. And I just stood there, didn't know what to do. Coach Evans came over and grabbed me by the neck and dragged me up to Truscott. And Truscott sent me home. Get out, get out, get out. So that night they came to visit my father. And Truscott told my father that I should be put away because I was dangerous. So my dad says, well, the hell with him. My dad went across the street to Pete Minsky, who lived upstairs over the variety store. And he talked to Pete Minsky, and he came back down and he says, starting tomorrow, you go to school at Scott. So I graduated from Scott.
Okay. Well, what do you remember growing up in town as far as being a kid? Where did you play? What did you do? What did you play?
Well, we played in different neighborhoods. You get friends from a different neighborhood, and that's where you play. For instance, we go up Lincoln Avenue, the Rosemurgys, Pete and Gail, and Ronnie Jones. And we play Hooper Hoy and kick the can and everything. And at 9 o'clock when the siren blew, you had to be home. Well, we'd make it, as soon as the siren started, we'd start running. Because my dad was still the chief then. When the siren went down, we were home. Same way at supper time. He'd come out in the backyard. Now we could be up on Lincoln Avenue, but we'd hear him whistle, because I could never do that. He'd give one of those, and we could hear that up there. Or I could say, let's get going. We'd run through people's yards and over fences. We'd get home in time. Because you didn't fool around.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad, you didn't fool around with him.
Do you have playgrounds, baseball
No
fields,
playgrounds,
football
no
fields,
playgrounds.
no-
The only fields we had were Crawford's Field. And that was just a plain, now it's a field, but it was just a plain
Coal field.
coal field, yeah. We played just pickup there. And the way that worked was on Saturday mornings, the young kids would get over there and start a game. And maybe by 9 o'clock, the older guys would come and kick them off. Well, then later on, the bigger ones, the seniors in high school, they came and kicked them off. And that's how it went. So, you know, there was no,
That's the way it was when I was a kid.
that's the way it was.
Yeah.
and you didn't argue. You know, you played as long as you might get 3 or 4 innings in, the big guys come say, okay, beat it.
Yeah.
And they take over. And then we had Fowler's Field. Now, Fowler's Field was a lot bigger and a lot smoother. There were no houses on it. And in fact, 1949, we had a rodeo. Oh, I forgot about the horses. We had 38 horses in Germany. In the late, let me see, I was in, it was before I moved to Scott, so I was probably in 8th or 9th grade. The war was over. Guys like Joe Austin lived right here on Main Street. He bought a horse. Guys came home from the service. They had a big parade in 1946. You probably have pictures of that.
There's pictures of it,
Yeah.
From the war.
And they were all on the steps there. Well, I remember that. I remember my dad was supposed to ride one of Floyd Battenberg's horses in the parade, and Floyd was riding the other one. Floyd was the mayor then, the Burgess.
Mm-hmm.
And the horse my dad was supposed to ride, they had the little barn that he had behind the store. Used to be up on Jefferson Avenue, Ronnie Jones's, Fred Jones's. And it was sitting on the edge of it, and the horse slipped on the bank and fell against the building and busted up my dad's knee, so he couldn't ride the horse. He had to be in a car. Oh, and another thing, when they paved Rushbrook in the 30s, I don't remember what year it was, 35 or 36, probably a record somewhere. That was all still dirt then.
Yeah.
When they paved Rushbrook Road, they had a parade. They had a parade all. I don't know how far it went. I don't know if it went all the way to Hard Lake or not. They had a parade for it.
Huh.
Yeah,
In the 30s.
it's got to be listed someplace.
Is that where they finally covered up the windows in the Windsor from the basement? Because the basement used to have windows that you could look out onto the road. We have pictures of that.
I don't know if that's when they did that.
That's because they probably raised the road up and put a sidewalk.
Yeah,
there.
well, that's right. Yeah, maybe they did that. You should have a picture. Well, I know my sister Dorothy had some good pictures. And when she died, I guess Gretchen, my niece, I got to go up and see if I can get them from Gretchen. There was pictures of the Windsor with my grandfather and his father-in-law, old man Snyder, standing in front of the Windsor holding one of the racehorses.
We have a picture that was just on Facebook that somebody took of a picture of the Windsor with 3 stories and a horse in front with somebody standing.
That might be the same picture.
And it was just on Facebook, and I don't know where it came from.
I remember that
Put it up
picture,
there.
if I can find it. And it didn't have that balcony out in front yet.
Yeah, it did have a balcony in the front. It didn't have a balcony on the side,
Did it?
if I can remember.
Well, the first picture I remember didn't have any balcony in front, any porch up there.
How about the coal breakers? What do you remember about them?
The coal breakers,
In the mines and like any accidents, any bad accidents that happened?
I don't remember any names or anything, but I can remember eating supper and the whistle would they have certain. If there was an accident, it blew so many times I don't remember what. And if there was going to be no work the next day, they would blow like once or something. Means they're not working that day. The breaker, they're not working that day. I remember that part.
Yeah, they used to blow the siren for the ambulance to come in. Black Mariah, the horse. They go
Yeah.
up the horse and bring it to the mines.
Well, she said there was a pump room behind the bank underground. Remember hearing about that?
The pump room that I remember
There
was
a big-
across from the bank and up on the hill there,
Okay.
where
That was an air shaft behind the Catholics. That big round. Remember those?
yeah, that big round thing. Yeah,
There
maybe.
was a couple of pillars there. There was one that we used to play on when we were kids. It
Yeah.
was solid concrete.
There was that one, and then there was
And
one
there
by
over by the River Creek.
and there was one by Langman's store. When I told you about Langman's store,
Yeah.
where that flower shop was later.
Okay.
Right there was one of those big concrete tanks too.
But I remember the one.
But
that
I
was-
remember the big pump that was up there where Jack Latney lived.
Yeah, that was the one, the big pump house with the
Yeah.
water pumps to pump the water out of the mine.
Out of the mines, yeah. I remember that one. I don't know what became of all that stuff. I left town.
That was, they said it was, who was it that told us about that? Art, was it Art Wilson?
Might have been, yeah.
Oh, I would remember that, sure.
How it was tiled and how they had offices down in
Well,
there.
they gave us, when we were kids in school, they gave us tours of it.
Really?
That was like your day, you know,
They take the kids right down?
take the kids down. Well, I didn't go all the way to the bottom.
Right, yeah.
But you go down in there and it was modern. They had lights and everything in it.
What do you remember about school activities, sports and stuff like that? Any of the big
Okay,
star
the
athletes
only
or-
sports they had in German when I was a kid was basketball.
You remember when they built this high school in 37,
No.
36, 37?
I remember when the original grade school burned down. I think when in 40 something. 46, 47, something like that.
Okay.
I remember when that burned down. But I was too young to remember when they built the school, the high school.
Yeah, they built it in 36, and the first class was in there in 37.
Well, I was only born in 35.
So they didn't have basketball before that because they didn't have a gym.
No, they didn't have a gym, yeah. But when I was going to school there was basketball. And I think they had baseball for a short while, but they didn't have much.
Yeah.
Because I remember going to a baseball game and that's where they played at Father's Field. It wasn't really a field and it didn't have fences, it didn't have anything. But I remember going to a game there and our pitcher was Pets. One of the Pets boys from Madison Avenue. And he hollered over to the coach, he didn't know what inning it was, or how many pitches it was or something. And he hollered over, how much was that? And Truscott was standing right there watching the ball game. He said, it's not how much, it's how many. I remember that. Everybody was laughing. But I remember they used to have a pickup football game on Thanksgiving Day in the morning. And I remember Sam Mattice. He was a football player. He'd take two guys with him everywhere. And I remember going up, it would be cold, there'd be snow flurries, it'd be cold. And after the game, everybody was invited to Jim Meehan's restaurant. Did you know where that was? You know where Danny Couture's house is?
Yeah.
Well, alongside of that house, when I was a kid, that was Kennedy's house.
Okay.
And alongside that was a very narrow, long building. And it was Danny Meehan's, or Jim Meehan and Danny, his brother Danny. They had a restaurant. They took turns doing.
Is that where the pool hall was?
They had a pool hall in the back part. But across the street was a big pool hall, where the variety store, where the convenience store is now, was a big building. And at one time there was a grocery store on the end. It was the Big Chief, and it was run by Seltzers, Dave and Tilly Seltzer, and the two kids, Beverly and what the heck was that kid's name? Well, it wasn't a kid, he was older than me. Beverly and name doesn't seem to ring a bell.
It'll come to you later.
Beverly and Cashmere they call it, Cashmere. Beverly and Cashmere Seltzer.
They had
Dave
apartments
and
above that, didn't they?
I think they did. I think that's where they lived, if I'm not mistaken. And across from them was the Acme store. And there was, in German, there was 9 bars. Even when I was a police chief in the 60s, there was 9 bars. Starting with my cookies, and then down to Helen Laputa's, and then down.
Cookie was where,
I don't know what's there now.
who had that place? The big white one with the
With
rectangle
windows, yeah, funny windows. Yeah.
Scrupa? Was it Scrupa's one?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Scoopers, yeah.
And then Helen's,
Then Helen's,
the Windsor.
then the Windsor, then Steve Pelax, and across from him was Big Adams, and over the east side was the Bottlers, and down at the end of town was the halfway house.
Where was that at?
That was later on. It was the Woodlands for a while.
Oh, where the Woodlands Inn was?
Yeah, where the Woodlands Inn was. That was
Okay.
the halfway house, and that was
Keegan's.
Keegan's. There you go. Joe Keegan and his wife. And his wife was a McDermott. And the bar up in Carbondale too, that was pretty fancy bar in Carbondale. That girl was also a McDermott. McDermott's daughters. I remember when they first started the Russian Hall over there, because they had dances. And I was going to school at Scott then, but a bunch of the boys from Scott would come down there and dance because there was a lot of
St.
girls.
Michael's Hall?
St. Michael's Hall, yeah. That was fairly new back in the early 50s. In fact, it was brand new.
What do you remember as far as stores?
Oh boy, we had a lot of stores. Every neighborhood had its own store. Well, like I say, there was Langman's store in Rushbrook there. There was,
That was a meat market and
there was everything there.
dress shop on the one side.
Yeah. Oh, and when Allen's, before Allen's bought Baker Brothers, Allen's was where you would remember maybe the variety store.
I remember the variety store.
That was Allen's clothing store.
Okay.
And next to that was another long, narrow place, and that was,
That was right next to where you lived. Right?
yeah. And the long, narrow part of that building too was Joe Calandruccio's tailor shop. He actually was a tailor. I mean, he actually wasn't like they are today. You take them in and they send them some way to get cleaned. He actually fixed things and hemmed pants. And
Didn't he move later on over to Bacon Street or Franklin Street?
He lived there,
Bacon
but-
Street.
that's where he lived.
Didn't he move his shop there in the
I don't
60s?
think so.
Or?
Not that I remember. Not in the 60s, because I was still a cop then. After that, maybe, but I know that was his house there in the corner, that nice house on the corner. Was his. But as far as sports, the biggest sports you would see around here were pickup things, like, for instance, the coal companies had baseball teams. There was a baseball team over in the east side. They paid, well, you sat on the column banks to watch the games. But they had some really good ball games, and they would have guys come up to the Einen, Breaker and Einen, and different guys. They had teams. And most of the players were from the east side.
They called the St. Michael's Vets.
I don't know what they call it.
They had trophies over there, I know, in the hall. and
That
they're
might
still
be
there.
after, yeah.
They're still there.
I don't know if they were St. Michael's. They were usually the coal company.
Bazooka Zella played over there.
Well, and you got little orange tabs in the coal sometimes, in the blue coal. And they were tickets to go to something free. They were like a teardrop shaped, and they were cardboard.
You mean when you bought your coal, that might be in the coal? and
Yeah, they really somewhere in the coal.
Orange colored.
Orange colored. You must remember them, huh? Yeah, orange colored. That's what they were, orange. I can remember the day. I can remember Pearl Harbor Day. We were at my grandparents up there in Rushbrook there in the White Elephant. We were there for Sunday dinner. And us kids were sitting around after dinner, on the floor waiting for the shadow to come out.
On the radio?
On the radio, waiting for the shadow. And all of a sudden something came over, and the men there, my dad and my grandfather and a couple of my cousins, the older ones. My dad says, "Whoa, quiet, listen, there's something coming." And it was FDR. He was telling about the Japanese attack at Pearl Harbor. And that the famous speech would be a day in infamy, and I remember all of that. And then my two cousins got up, and they said, "We're going down tomorrow and sign up." Wesley Ballonis, my cousin Wesley Ballonis, he signed up. He went down and joined the Navy, and George McGee, my other cousin, he went down and joined the Army. They both came home from it after it was over, but Wesley Ballonis' ship got blown up, and he was a radio man, and he got burnt, but he was all right later on. But they both got home. They both got home, yeah. But I remember even the Korean War. I remember Basil Keklak. Basil, geez, I knew him so good. I was only a kid, but my brother-in-law was Neil Nafis. And Neil Nafis and Basil were buddies after the Second World War. They were both in the Second World War. And they were standing in front of the Hotel Windsor, and I was standing there listening to them talk. And Basil was trying to talk my brother-in-law into re-up it. He says, "Let's go over to Korea and kick some ass." Well, Neil didn't want to go. He just got married to my sister. He said, "I can't go." Basil said, "Well, I'm going." I'm going to go over there and really kick some ass over there. Well, he got killed over there. Basil Keklak. He was a tough guy. He always wore a big belt buckle. These days they talk about cowboys with a big belt buckle. Basil had a big belt buckle he wore all the time too. I hung around a lot. I absorbed a lot, I guess, because I remember conversations and things that happened that.
How about any Civil War veterans? Were they around? Any of them around?
Yes, there was one. No, I don't know. He wasn't Civil War. He was Spanish American.
What was his name?
Let me think now. He lived over the east side. He was Irish. His name was. He still wore his campaign hat all the time.
Did he really? Wow.
And he was always he was an alky when I knew him. He was an old guy and he was an alky.
Mm-hmm.
But he would blow the bugle through his hands like he'd walk around blowing the bugle, pretending he had a bugle.
Wow.
His name was what the hell was his name? Little skinny old guy.
Probably buried here in the German cemetery.
Probably,
Yeah.
I imagine. But he lived over in the east side. You know how they got the name Calico Lane?
No.
Yes.
Do you know?
Yeah.
They already found out, did they?
I didn't.
You
Well,
can tell us.
go ahead.
It'll be on.
Well, one story is that there was a fire in the dress factory, and there was a raid, and then on the following week, all the women were going around wearing calico dresses.
Well, that's not what I heard. My dad told me that there was a train accident on the O&W train, and they broke the doors open, took 10 big bundles of calico out, and then everybody was wearing calico. That's the story my dad told me.
What was the date of the lightning strike?
The date of the lightning strike was in 1930 when Monica, yeah. That was before you were born. My
The
father remembered
lightning struck a group of boys over in the east side.
Well, I didn't know about
that. Yeah,
that.
like Monica. My father was 7 and he wasn't playing, but he remembers when it hit the fence and the boy was leaning up against it, he died, like Monica.
I never heard that
Swenska
story.
was in that. Remember Swenska? He died last year.
Mike Slinska?
It's quite a guy.
Mike Selinska.
He lived over here on Madison Avenue. He had the heavy equipment. He ran a Bobcat and stuff.
Oh,
That's the one I know anyway. Mike
Yeah.
Slinska.
did he move up to Heart Lake?
He used to live up the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, he used to live at Heart Lake.
Yeah.
Up by Heart Lake, up
Yeah,
past
lived
Heart
up
Lake.
on one of them new houses on
Yeah,
the right
the
hand
brick-
side.
yeah, I knew him, Mike Selinska.
How about train accidents? Were there any? Do you remember any of those in town? here?
Yeah, I remember the one at the 109th was good. That train accident with all the guys from here that were in the 109th.
Oh, really?
Charlie Battenberg and all those guys. They were in that train accident where so many guys got killed and they're
Going out towards
Going out to go to Korea.
Indiana, Illinois,
Yeah.
or someplace.
they were on their way to Korea.
Oh, wow.
That's where they were going. I remember that one.
How about here in town? Do you remember any in?
I don't remember any train accidents. I remember train accidents, but not in German.
Yeah.
How about Mr. Kennedy? Didn't he lose a leg or some such?
Oh,
in
but Johnny Kennedy.
a train accident right over here?
Yeah, when he was 5 years old.
Was that the D&H?
The DNA, no, the O&W, I think.
Oh, no.
He was playing down here by the Miller Casket, him and some other kids. And they were trying to beat the train across the tracks or something, and he fell, and it ran over his leg and cut it off.
Wow.
He had 2 sisters, Karen and Betty, and his father's name was Harold Kennedy. Yeah, he died of
In the
froze
snow.
to death in the chicken, huh?
He froze to death.
Froze to death there in a chicken coop.
What happened?
He was
Oh,
hitting
okay.
the bottle, and it was the winter time like now, and he had an old car, and I guess it broke down. And so he started walking home to Chapman Lake because they did have a house down here on Washington Avenue, but I guess they lost it or something. They were living in their cottage at Chapman Lake, and he was walking in the snow to Chapman Lake,
Wow.
and I guess he saw a light on in a building, Bucky Vale's, and he went into Bucky Vale's chicken coop. There was a night light on for the chickens, so he thought he'd go in there and get warm. And when Bucky went over and opened up in the morning, and he walked in there, here's this frozen statue standing there. He frozen standing up, all covered with frost and ice and everything.
I know Bucky Vale very well, yeah.
Yeah, I know Bucky Vale. He's my cousin.
Is it?
Yeah, because his mother was a Snyder too.
Okay.
What do you remember of the other stores in town, like ice cream parlors and candy stores and meat markets and whatever?
You're just in time. The meeting's over. Good. Yeah, let me see. We had a lot of them. There was the It'll Do store.
It'll do.
You remember that too, yeah?
Yeah, up on
Art
Lincoln.
mentioned that.
What did they sell in there? Everything?
Small stuff.
Not food or anything, was it?
Nah, not that I remember. He sold candy. I think he sold cigars. And he sold cigarettes because all the kids bought cigarettes there. But starting from Washington Avenue up here coming down, there was Ted Edwards. He had a cigar store across from where the bank is. I think that's an apartment building now. That's where he lived at the time. And then there was Grace Collins's. That was a very well-known place because that's where everybody hung out. And then where the, well, it's torn down now, where Eddie Rossi had his restaurant, and Howard Young had his restaurant in there. That was Jim Mullally's ice cream parlor. They all had different ice cream. Oh, and up where the bank is now was Russell's ice cream. Mm-hmm. Russell's ice cream was was a nickel a scoop, but it was also the worst. It was kind of really watered down. And let's see, Grace Collins sold Mulholland ice cream. That was a little bit better. And Jimmy Mullally sold Dolly Madison ice cream, and that was a little bit better.
Just a nickel a scoop though, that's all?
No, they were 10 cents.
Oh.
But then Matt Tice's opened up in 49, and they pretty much took care of everything. Because they had milkshakes and ice cream, and they had a thing, I forgot, it was something about a pig.
Oh, that was what did they call it?
It was
Pig's Dinner.
Pig's Dinner, yeah, Pig's Dinner. It was a big banana, what did they call those? Big
Banana split.
Big split. And it was piled with everything. I mean, it was big. And if kids, if you could eat one, you got it for free. If you finish it, you could get it for free.
And you got a pen to hold.
Yes, that's right. You get the pin.
Did you ever finish one?
I couldn't. My brother Eric could.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. I got my brother Eric had a summer job up at a place in Waymart at Lake Lodore.
Yeah.
Well, now it's the American, now it's the Salvation Army, but then it was a Jewish camp. Mm-hmm. Camp Witherwind, with horses for P.J. Burke and Archibald had horses.
Yes, he did. I remember him.
Yeah, P.J. had horses. And Eric worked there for the summer, and I was working at Doc O'Hensy's at El Rancho. And Eric had to go away to take some tests for college. And so I had to go and fill in for him up there at Lake Lodore. When we got down there, oh God. We went down at night after we got the horses all bedded down and everything. We went down to the mess hall to have a cup of coffee or something, you know. And the cook came out, or the baker came out and he put a whole apple pie in front of me. He said, "There's your apple pie." I said, "Well, I just want a slice." No, he said, "You gotta eat the whole thing." Eric ate one every night, so you better eat one. I ate that pie, I went to bed with a bellyache you couldn't believe. I went for breakfast, and they had scrambled eggs with bacon in it, you know. So everybody's getting a scoop. Well, he put a whole tray in front of me. He said, "There's your breakfast." I said, "Well, who's that? That's for every." No, he said, "That's yours." Eric always ate a whole one. Eric was tall and skinny. And geez, could he eat?
Yeah. Oh.
I'll never forget that. Oh God, I couldn't eat all that. He could. Well, my dad would make pancakes on Sundays. Mm-hmm. And he didn't make little ones. He made pretty good sized pancakes. And he says, "I'll make as many as you guys can eat." So Eric and I started a contest. I got to like 9 or 10 or something, which I was stuffed.
Yeah.
He ate 16 of them. And they were good size.
Wow.
That guy could eat. He'd eat a whole loaf of bread with a bowl of soup.
Wow.
Oh, they were the days.
When did your dad become the chief in German? What did he do? Retire from the
He quit the
police?
state police because the prohibition was still on. And they got word there was certain places you could hit and certain places you couldn't hit. Mm-hmm. And my dad says that he complained about it. And they said, "Well, if you don't like it, quit." So he says, "All right, the hell with you." So he quit. And the day he quit one day, and the next day they hire him for chief of police.
Wow. Was there many cars on the road when he was a policeman here in town? Probably not.
No, God, no. In fact, you had both sides parking.
Oh, well, wow.
Yeah, you parked on both sides of the street in those days.
Did they have radios in the cars? Or?
No.
Really? Wow.
Well, we didn't have radios in the car when I was a cop. That was in the 60s.
Yeah.
In fact, they didn't have a car until in, let's see,
You just walked the beat then?
Yeah.
you drove your own car.
Oh, really?
They gave you $1 a day for gas. Of course, gas was only a quarter to a gallon, but
Yeah. Wow.
that's another thing about the prices.
Do you remember when they got the first police car in Germany?
Oh yeah, 1962. I was the police chief. They got a 1962 Plymouth Savoy from the guy in Archibald. It's
Ernie Smith.
Ernie Smith. Well, you're good. Ernie Smith.
If
and-
you were out on patrol and a car, somebody needs you, how would they flag you down? People,
The red light on the telephone pole.
really? Wow.
They'd call, well, originally they'd call,
Hello.
hi. Originally they'd call the Bell Telephone Company. And the girls in the Bell Telephone Company, they had the button and they turned the red light on every pole, every corner of telephone poles had a light on them. And there was one on top of the Crystal Fire Company over on Madison Avenue. And you could see that light from anywhere. And you keep, when you were making your patrol, you just kept looking.
Yeah.
And you see the light come on, you immediately had to get to a telephone.
Was there many telephones around?
There was quite a few
Just for the police or for like,
No.
big
No,
phones?
public phone.
public phones. Yeah, the phone booths. There was one down on where the split is are going to Iron and Archibald.
Yep.
There was one there. There was one right here on on Rushbrook Street, in the corner of Rushbrook and Madison. There was one.
Yeah.
There was a couple more too. I can't remember them all. But what we did too was, you know, that fire siren. You guys probably, when you were a kid, you heard it. 9 o'clock, the cop would blow the siren. There was a reason for that. In 1934, my dad and John Mello was the mayor then. My dad and John Mello got the council to pass an ordinance that 9 o'clock was going to be kids off the street.
In Archibald too.
Yeah, everybody got off the street at 9 o'clock.
1934 that was?
Yeah, I remember at 34 or 36. I think it was 34 though.
Okay.
Right before you were born then.
Yeah.
That guy who blew himself up, you don't know what year that was, do you? How old were you?
Well, let me see. I might have been maybe 7,
So it'd be
maybe 42. It was during the war years yet, though. I know that.
Yeah.
Maybe it was in the 40s.
Yeah.
I remember that guy. I could draw you a picture of that guy. Spooky looking guy.
Oh boy. Any other characters that lived in town?
Town had a lot of characters, but
What kind of crimes were back then in the 60s?
not much.
Yeah.
Not much. In fact, crimes that I had a couple, but they were mostly outsiders. Either moved in town or just was coming through town. Like I caught a burglar in the Bed Nash's gas station one night. We used to start a patrol at 7 o'clock. We worked from 7 to 4 in the morning, 7 and 8, 4 in the morning. And around 11 or 12, we tried to change a little bit so nobody know exactly when we were going in. We go home and have lunch, or supper actually, because you sleep during the day.
Yeah.
Well, I went out to make my patrol, and I was just going up Rushbrook Street, and I noticed, and the Bed Nash's was in Mayfield. Of course, the Mayfield cops wouldn't bother coming down there. I noticed a broken window in the overhead door. So I hurried up and shut the car off. And I snuck up and looked in the window, and I could see a guy in there rifling the cash register and filling his pockets with stuff.
Wow.
So I stepped on that air hose. I stepped on that air hose they had for when you pulled in, you know. And the guy jumped up and looked. I says,
Am I in your chair?
"No, with your hands up. The place is surrounded." And this guy came out, and he stuck his head out and his one leg and his arm. And I figured, he was a little skinny guy. I figured this guy's going to run.
Yeah.
And as soon as he stuck out, I hit him as hard as I could, right in the side of the head, and down he went. He was out. And he didn't come to till I got into Carbondale. I locked him up in Carbondale because we didn't have a jail anymore.
I was
We had a jail. We had a nice jail.
Yeah.
But the law was you couldn't use the jail unless you got somebody there 24 hours. So we couldn't use it.
Oh, wow.
But
So the only time you could ever put somebody in the jail is when you guys were in the,
if you're right in the building,
yeah.
you
And
can
that
put
was-
him in
That was
temporary.
when the police station was at the Borough
It was
Building?
the Borough Building, yeah. My dad had it, and when my dad was a cop, the police station was in the bottom of the old Crystals, that little place on Madison,
Yeah.
down at the bottom. Because the guy was telling me a story one time. I forgot who it was now, one of the older guys. They were having playing poker in the police state, in the fire company there. And he said, your dad came in with the guy to give him a hard time. And he threw him down those cellar steps to put him in jail. And he threw him in jail and locked him up. But I told my dad about it. My dad says, oh, geez, I felt sorry for that poor guy because I forgot about him. Oh. He said, I went back 2 days later, I remember. And the guy says, I'll never do that again. I'll never do that. I said, well, by God, see. He presented it on purpose. My dad says, I forgot all about that guy. Somebody mentioned to him, hey, Ed, when are you going to get that guy out of jail? He said, holy Christ, I forgot about him for 2 days.
So did your father patrol on a horse?
No, horses were gone by then.
Okay.
They still had horses, but I mean, they're not patrolling.
Okay.
My father said he remembers the state police with big paddles. There was some, I don't know what was going on, but the women were yelling, and they were paddling the women on the backside with big paddles. The state police on horseback.
Yeah, on horseback. Well, I don't think it was paddles. My dad talked about his nightstick. They had a 36-inch nightstick.
Wow. Yeah,
And they'd ride on people, because they tried not to hit anybody, but he found out when they had a big raid or a big union probably in Einan to break it up. And they called the state police down there, and my dad and Silent Smith went down. But he said the horses kept jumping, and he said the ladies were jabbing the horses with their hat pins.
Oh, sure.
He said, well, by Jesus. So they said, well, you're gonna punch my horse. I'm gonna punch you. And they started using a nightstick. They said, what about the women? He says, we knocked them right on their ass too. In those days, cops didn't have to take a lot of gruff. Today, poor cop, they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Dick, was your dad the chief of police at the time?
Oh yeah, he was the trooper then.
Yeah, yeah,
When he did that, he was the trooper. He was the chief of police from 24 to 44.
20 years.
I was the chief from 60 to 65. And then I
I
graduated.
knew you were the chief.
Yeah, I know you rode around, but I often talk about these guys. These guys used to ride around with me in a police car, and we talk about police work and everything. Tommy Kenny, and of course, poor Tommy couldn't get to be a cop because it was
He
late.
always wanted to be a cop.
He wanted to be, but he had that burnt leg. But Casey O'Neill and McCarthy and Garrity and who
Bobby
else?
Crock.
Huh?
And Bobby Crock.
Bobby Crack was. Bobby
He
Crack was
said
a
you
trooper.
picked him up a couple times.
Oh, picked them up. Oh, I didn't know. I don't mean I mean they rode around because they
He
wanted to.
used to tell me about some of the
Oh
things.
yeah. Well, their kids weren't that bad. They think I talk to some of these guys now when they're older, and they think they were bad. They were nothing. Like
Terry Williams?
Well, he was bad. He was really bad.
He made the list.
He was on the top of the list.
Terry Williams stabbed the dog next door to his house, just to stab it. A little white
Wow.
Poodle.
poodle, yeah, little white poodle. He stabbed the neighbor's dog. He took a cat and waited he had a cat by the hind legs and the tail and waited till the bus came along and threw it under the bus.
Wow.
Then he robbed in the Catholic church, the poor box. And he went to, I took him to court for that one. And the judge, what was that judge's name? He couldn't believe that he was bad. He came to court, his mother brought him to court in a little red jacket, I remember, and a bow tie and his hair combed and shiny face. And he's looking at the judge. The judge said to me, now wait a minute, Chief, you can't tell me this kid did something like that. I says, yes, sir, he did. No, I don't believe that. Judge Hoban. He said he wouldn't believe that he did that, so he finally just turned him over to his mother. Well, then his mother bought him a BB gun for Christmas, and the nuns had a brand new building built,
Yeah.
and it had 36 windows in it, all the way around, and he shot them all out. I had to nail him again. His mother spent more money paying his fines.
Is he still around today?
No, he died. He died young.
Yeah. Were you a cop when he was on top of the bank roof? Or was that later?
No, that
He
was.
climbed the rain gutter and was up on, trying to find a way to get in the bank.
I thought they said somebody hit a ball up there and he went up after the ball.
No, he was trying to find a way to get in.
Oh boy.
No, I didn't. I was a cop then. But we had some times that I caught a couple burglars. Of course, I used to do things that wouldn't be kosher today. Like if a guy robbed the gas station down at the bottom of where the Y is there, going to Archibald and Mayfield.
Was that Christians?
Christian. It
Was
wasn't
Iutes.
Christians then, it was
Iutes.
Abbott's.
Was I
It was well, it was way before Iutes.
Okay.
It was Abbott's. He was from Dixon City. but he owned the gas station there. And a guy on a Sunday night, a guy heard a window crack, a crash, and he looked out and he saw this guy robbing this place, and he had the name, the model of the car, and he called me right away. And I went down there. The guy was gone already, but he described the car. I said, I know what that is, because we had a gangster that just got out of jail, and he had a wife and a bunch of kids, and he was on welfare. And I'll tell you where he was living, over there in the alley between between Jefferson Avenue and the ball field.
Okay.
That little house in the alleyway there. That's where he was living. So I went over there, and in my car I always had a blank search warrant and a $50, and I put the $50 and I rubbed it like a seal. And I went over and knocked on the door, and he came to the door with a bathrobe on, but he had on pants and shoes. And his car, the hood of his car was hot. It was an old brown station wagon. And I said, I have a warrant to search your house. He said, why? I didn't do it. I was sleeping. I said, you're a liar. So I took my flashlight and I started looking. Well, there was four brand new tires under one bed. There was kids there. The kids in there. He was giving all kinds of. He was complaining. Oh, my kids are sleeping. You wake. I said, I have a warrant. I looked and I found spark plugs and the money out of the cigarette machine. He broke the cigarette machine. I took him right out of the way. And his wife says, well, what am I going to do? I said, I don't know. Talk to your lawyer. Because I figured she'd get a lawyer or something. Took him right up to Carbondale and locked him up. We had a few bad ones, but not much. The guy that robbed Bed and Ashes, he was from Archibald, Red Angrati. That was a funny one too, because Rippy Callahan was the mayor, but he also worked at the courthouse as a guard at the courthouse. And I couldn't go to the hearing because I had an operation on my foot. So Walter Burke went in my place. Walter Burke was like a part-time cop, and he went down in my place. Well, they took a little break during the court hearing, and this guy just got up and walked out, Red and Grady. He walked out of the courthouse. Nobody paid any attention to him. The sheriff's deputies in those days weren't like they are today with the uniforms. They were just a couple of old guys smoking cigars, ashes falling on their shirt. You know? They were just political hacks, you know. They didn't see the guy going, but Rippy Callahan saw him go. And the guy, once he got down the steps of the courthouse, he took off running. Rippy ran after him and tackled him and brought him back. Rippy was there was a big article in the paper about him. He was a big hero that day.
Wow.
Red Angrati.
What year was that, do you remember?
Huh?
What year was that?
Well, it had to be 63 or 64, something like that, because I left in May of 65. I went with the liquor board.
What was the guy's name?
Angrati.
Angrati?
Red Angrati.
Do you
I don't know
him,
what his
Tom?
first name
From
was.
Archibald?
Does you know
Yes.
him?
He had a terrible accident in front of Battenberg's funeral home around 1960. The car spin right around. Red Angrati, Angradi.
Yeah, Red Angrati. He lived with his grandmother down there in Archibald. Then we had for a while we had a guy calling women up and scaring the heck out of them. One was Pat Wilson, Art Wilson's first wife. And she was a nervous person anyway, and those kids were young then too. This guy called me up, and she wouldn't tell me what he said, but she told Art, and Art told me, because she wouldn't say the stuff that he said to her.
Mm.
And he said that he was watching her, and she's a beautiful blonde, and she had a nice red dress on, and it scared the hell out of her.
Wow.
So I was thinking, God, I don't know who that could be. So a little while later, I got another call. Ronnie Jones's wife. Guy called her up. Said pretty much the same stuff. Said, geez, I can't imagine who that could be. No way to catch him in those days. You couldn't do the telephone things like today, you know. And then later on, there was another one. Tony Rotel's wife, down on Franklin Avenue, or down on Madison Avenue. She called me, but she told me exactly what he said and how he said it. And I said, "Do you think he might call back?" She says, "Well, he might." I told him if he's interested, give me another call. And then she called me, and he knew that Tony was working at nights down at Ina Drugstore. So the guy did call back, and I said, "If he ever calls back, I'll keep cruising the neighborhood. If he calls back, flip your porch light on and off." Driving down Madison Avenue one night, and here's the porch light. So I pulled right in, and she still had him on the phone. And I said, "Invite him up." And he said they didn't have a car. She said, "Well, I'll come and get you. Where are you?" So he said, "I'm in the telephone booth down by the gas station at the end of the..." So I went down and when I went down, she still had him on the line. And she's laughing and talking with him and everything going on. And I walked in and he's in there with his back up against the door, you know, those folding doors. I kicked the door open and he went down. So I grabbed him right by his neck and the phone was hanging. I says, what was her first name? Well, I knew her name then. I said, is this you now? She said, yeah, I'm here. I said, I got him. I got him up to my office, shook him down. He had 460 telephone numbers, mostly on matchbook covers.
Wow.
He was calling women all over the place, not just German, all over the place. So I locked him up and I took him down to Squire Rippon, who was tough. That was my favorite, Squire Rippon.
Oh, yeah.
He was always on the cop side, the other guy, you know. So I took him down to Squire Rippon and the church up in Mayfield, the Polish church, I think, or the Russian church. The guy was from up there. His name was Mark. His last name was Mark. I remember his first name now. But the church came to the hearing and said, well, we have a place for people like that. If we could take them, we'd give them, rehabilitate them. So Rippon surprised me. I thought he'd say no way, but he says, okay, let him have him. It was about a month later, the guy's walking around again. He never went for any rehabilitation. I thought I should have shot him when I had the chance. Then we had a guy from Archibald too.
Oh, no.
Billy Kelly. Not the cop, but another Billy Kelly, the young Billy Kelly. Did you know him?
Waterman. Would it be Waterman?
He was a young guy,
lot of
curly,
Kellys.
blonde curly hair. He was calling women up and talking dirty to her.
Salem Road.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Salem Road, yeah.
I know him.
Well,
Knew him.
that was later on. That was when they finally got, Calvin Johnson was in charge of the local Bell Telephone. And Calvin Johnson said he had a way with the cards. Every phone call that went through, it dropped in a drawer like that, you know, they were punched.
Mhm.
So we went down, he and I went through them, and we found the phone number and the guy. He lived with his grandmother, but he had his own telephone upstairs in his bedroom. So we nailed him, and his poor grandmother she couldn't imagine it. Nailed him. I found out later on, he was really bad, you know, with women. He was only a kid, you know, teenager, but mean. I mean, he called women up and that stuff he said to them. Oh my God. But we had a few interesting things, but not like drugs and nothing. We didn't have any of that stuff.
How about other stores in town, like grocery stores, meat markets?
There was lots of them.
Stuff that maybe you can.
Every neighborhood had one practically. Let's see, down at the end of town, down in the bottom on South Main Street was Donnie Yergowski's.
Yeah.
He had a grocery
Yeah,
store.
yeah.
Yeah, I used to shop in there too. And since we got paid once a month, we'd have to have a running bill all month long, you know, paid them off at the end of the month. So we had Donnie Yergowski's, Alvin Young's store was on
That's Ruby.
Madison and Franklin. I mentioned the It'll Do store. They didn't have much up there now. And there was Langland's big store on Rushbrook Street, and Rudolph's over the east side. Oh, and Steve Strosky had a little over in the east side.
Go ahead.
Steve Strosky had a little store too.
Okay.
I don't remember how much food he sold, but he did have
See if you're coming to the meeting.
cigars and cigarettes and candy,
Okay.
like candy. And it was in the front room of his house.
That's okay. We're doing an interview.
And I peddled the Carbondale News, and in those days the Carbondale News was
Let's
a
see
daily,
who's here.
and it had colored funnies on comics on Fridays, and it was 10 cents a week. And I was in Steve Strosky talking to him when the word came over the radio that the Germans had given up the Second World War. I remember that. And then there was a parade. Oh, I got home that night from peddling my papers. Everybody already knew about it by then. And a parade was coming down Main Street, just a pickup parade. And the guy named, if I can remember his doggone name now. Maybe it'll come to me. A bunch of guys were drunk, and they were pushing this guy in a wheelbarrow. An older guy. He was in a wheelbarrow. They were all making noise, and anybody that had a musical instrument was playing it. Big thing going on. The Germans gave up. And when the Japanese gave up, I was, one of those times I was sick. I was sick at home. And I heard that when the Japanese gave up.
Where was that Strosky store?
It was on the corner of, see, what was the cross store? Street. It was on Hudson, Delaware Street, and what was the crossover street?
Was it the one up from Butler, the next one up?
Yeah, no, let me see. No, that one went up by the Russian church. The one after that
One after that, okay.
was it Spruce. I don't remember what it was.
Elm
Elm.
Street?
Elm Street, is it Elm Street? That's where it was. Steve Strosky had a nice little store. Oh, and then there was Red.
Well, they called it Red's store.
Red's place, yeah.
He had
trying to
cigarettes
think
for
of his name
2 for a
now.
nickel.
Over the lane there.
Yeah,
Goloszewski?
Goloszewski, yeah, Red Goloszewski. He had one of those little places. Oh, and then George Lapata had a store.
How about restaurants? Was there many restaurants in town?
Yeah, quite a few.
Where was Lapata's store?
Lapata's was on. God, I can't remember the names of those stores over there. The streets over there anymore. When you went under, as soon as you went under the viaduct, the one alongside of Butler's.
Butler's. Was in halfway in the block there was a
Yeah, in the middle of the store. Yeah,
Okay.
that was a store.
Okay.
And of course there was Rudolph's.
Less checks?
Kuzma Leszek, I don't think he had a store, did he?
Yeah, not my, well, his father, my uncle's father.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Where was that?
It's over the lane somewhere.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, he definitely had a store.
I knew Kuzma Leszek. I was his paper boy. In fact, I papered I peddled the Tribune in the morning, and the Carbondale News in the afternoon,
Wow.
and the Sunday paper. And I always had money. And my brother never had any, but he always took it. He
You
always needed
remember the
money.
newspapers in German, that when the German had
The German,
road?
I remember the German press. That was in the alley, let me see, that was behind where Cooch's, oh, that's another bar, Cooch's.
What years was that paper printed?
Well, I think he went out of business in around the 1950, I think. You have to check on that, because I don't remember when he went out of business. I remember his paper was pretty good. He was a little old guy, and he was hard to talk to. But he also took photographs, because you could go there and get your picture taken. Another one that had a photo shop was Charlie Avery.
Yeah.
He sold cameras and
Cameras
stuff.
and,
Yeah.
yeah. So the German press you said was behind Cooch's bar on Main Street?
It was, yeah, it was in the back there. I'm trying to remember which building it was. I think it was, later on it was Cooch's Bar, I think was the building. Oh, you had to go down a little bit of a,
Down towards the
Down-
Miller
down-
Casket.
yeah, down the grave,
Okay.
grade there. I don't remember the old guy's name either, but he'd been there forever. Let's see, grocery stores.
Well, you named most of them, but there was a store down there on Main Street, going down the hill across from the
Oh, yeah. Okay, what the heck was that guy's name? He was a young guy. That guy later on became, he was the owner of the big fancy place in Oliphant where everybody had their weddings and everything.
Sullum's.
Huh?
Sullum?
No, Solomon was a store. This was a bar, a restaurant. This guy, I can't remember the guy's name, he was a young guy at the time. Oh, and half of that was, half of that building besides the store, the other half was Bruce's barber shop. We had a lot of barber shops. A lot of barber shops.
Okay, so
Start with Joe Laputa, up there by Laputa's bar. There was Joe Laputa, there was Pete Whitney, there was Jack Edwards, there was Griffiths was downstairs, where later on it was Kachura's down the basement.
Yeah, Danny Couture.
Danny Kachura's, well before him it was, oh man, Griffiths, what was his first name? I don't remember.
How much for a haircut back then?
Oh, 50 cents.
Oh.
Oh, and then there was, geez, right across the street over here. That his daughter was running a beauty shop for a while. What the heck's their name?
Shashansky?
Yeah, Zashansky's. But Zashansky's father-in-law was actually the first guy in there. Rubel. Tony Rubel. And he had a couple of daughters. And one of them married Soshansky, what was Soshansky's first name? Ay. He became the.
I do remember the barber shop thing over at Jashansky's.
Yeah.
How about hardware stores, other stores? What do you?
Okay, up on Washington Avenue, there was Mills. Mills' hardware store, and in the back was a big lumber yard.
That was on Rushbrook?
No, on Washington.
Okay, that was
Right next to me.
right next to where you were.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's right.
And then there was. Let me see. I think that's the one that's the one that Max Kleffer, I think, originally took over, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Mills'.
It's Mr. Clever.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked before.
Oh, you died before.
What was Max's son's name?
Arthur.
Arthur. I knew him too. Yeah. He married one of my cousins, a Snyder girl. from
Snyder.
Georgia. Yeah. Lola May.
Lola Mason.
Lola Mason.
They're both gone now.
I know. Let's see, where there was more hardware. Oh, there was Bill Sparber on Washington Avenue there. Let me see, what's there now? I can't remember. Oh, that guy with the lawn business.
Oh, okay. Right next to the Roses, where Doc Roderick was.
Yeah, well, across the street from there, Bill Sparber there was a hardware store, a plumbing store, and he sold Bendix Corporation stuff.
That's where Bertucci is now.
Yeah, that's the name I was trying to think of, Petrucci.
Wasn't there a hardware store in the other half of the post office, and then they?
Yes, I'm trying to think of the name.
Well, it was Wasley's in the end. I
It
don't
was
know what it was
Wasley's,
before
actually.
then.
Then the guy who owned it then lived where his house was where Gail Rosemary lives now.
Oh.
Well, Gail said he used to work there at that.
Yeah, if Gail was here, he'd
Hardware store.
remember that guy's name. I can't remember.
I think he gave it to us and gave us the name when we did the interview, because he said he used to work there. He used to mix the oil and put the oil in the cans and put the oil in the windows and. You know, Walter?
That was half of the post office.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a gas pump out in front of it with the big globe on it,
Sparber.
with the glass
Huh?
globe.
Sparber, I think, wasn't it?
I had Bill Sparber, I mentioned already. I'm trying to remember that guy's name.
Finally, I'm there.
Boy, oh boy, I wish I could remember his name because that was a big hardware store.
Yeah. We'll probably have it on record.
In fact, he was when they started the Victory Gardens in First World War. My dad had our back. He had Charlie Harris. That's the name I was trying to think of. Charlie Harris lived up there on Westbrook Street Road, going towards the country. Remember, I told you the houses were back. The houses, the back of them are showing now, and they used to be. Charlie Harris lived there, and he had 2 mules. And he brought them down, and he brought a buckboard down with a plow in the back, and he did people's lawns, yards to plant a garden, Victory Gardens. And he came and did ours. Because we had a flower garden. My brother Eric and I used to win flower shows down at the Methodist Church. And my dad dug all them up for Victory Gardens, so we grew vegetables the rest of the time.
Anybody have any other questions? Anything else you'd like to hear?
You mentioned the Windsor and the barracks behind it.
The barracks was in that. Was in
Right
the
in there. Behind there, what was that Pritchard burying ground? There was one
A cemetery there.
cemetery
stone
there.
there, yeah.
One stone. in
Do
the
you know
back.
anything about that? The
No.
Pritchard family with the cemetery?
His name
Oh,
was Richard
Pritchard's.
Pritchard.
Pritchard's did live at one
Right on the
time.
house next to the creek. In the back of it, there's a.
Mrs. Muelheisen was a
There's
Pritchard.
one like a gravestone there.
Yeah.
It's behind the fence now. You can't even see it, but it's on our website. I took a picture of it. It's there.
Yeah. I remember a Pritchard lady lived in
Yeah.
Madison Avenue.
But there is,
I think it was John Mullally's mother.
Walter might know.
John Mullally's mother.
That was Pritchard, I think.
but they never could completely identify what that was. Somebody said that that's where she buried the dogs, and but there was Now, it wasn't that obvious, but there was a tombstone
Yeah, I remember
in the
seeing
back
it.
of that, and they never could really figure out
I never saw
what
it.
was the story on it.
Something it's 7 years old or something like that. It's a
Yeah.
number, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Because we went
She
over
was
to
an
I was
interesting
nosy enough.
character.
Do you remember Steve Pelak's bar?
Oh, boy, I remember Steve Felix bar.
That was my grandfather's cousin.
Was it?
Yeah.
Quart of beer for $1, a whole quart. 3 guys, $3. Go get a quart apiece. Go up on the strippings and
That's-
Pete Rosenberg's old car.
We used to pay less than that when I
For a
was
quart?
a kid. Yeah, for a quart of beer. We used to go up to Simpson and get it. Knock on
Oh.
the back door and
3
get it
for $1.
The 5.
Yeah. We used to get it, and I forget going with young Joe Amadio and Terry Williams.
Was it
and
512
Paul
Club or
Munson
something?
and That's 512, Club 526.
526. There
Knock
you
on
go.
the back door and the lady come out and give you a quart of beer in a
Rosie,
bag.
wasn't it? Rosie?
Yeah,
How about on Sunday? Were your bars closed on
Oh
Sunday?
yeah, they were closed on Sunday, and even the movie theater was closed on Sunday.
But you had to go around the back door was open.
Yeah, that was the back. That was the Sunday
That
door.
was the bar.
Yeah.
Where was the movie at?
Did you run them
The movie?
projection? And
Yeah. His
I
father.
remember my mother telling me.
Yeah, I was the last projectionist they ever had.
Where was it at?
Right
It
up
was in
next to
that
the
brick
window.
building that got torn down next to the Windsor. It
Okay.
was in there. One half of the building was when I was running the projector. One half of the building was the movie theater, and the other half was your uncle's restaurant,
Yeah.
Casey's restaurant.
Yeah.
They had the best hamburgers. The 2 Casey brothers from Archibald.
Ken and Teddy, yeah.
Yeah. They of all the restaurants in town, they had I don't know where they got their meat, but they had the best hamburger, juicy.
It was right next to the Windsor and
Yeah, it was that big brick building.
Yeah.
What was the name of the movie theater?
Just a German movie theater. That's all.
Well, they call it the Rat Trap too.
Well, that wasn't the name of it.
There's a name on the. I have one ticket from it, and there is a name on it, and I just can't think of
One
it.
was the
It's a rat. It was known as a rat
Bob
trap.
told
The
me
bug
what the name was,
house.
and I kept-
Depending upon whether it's Mayfield or German.
Well, the German theater opened a half hour before Mayfield.
Yeah.
So when I take a reel off and put it in the box, and the guy could run down from Mayfield and get it and run back up, and they'd show the first one, and I'd show the second, because you never got a whole movie on one reel.
Yeah.
And
Somebody saw the end before the beginning.
his,
I know that was Mike Liptak that did that.
his father had to show me when I first started. He had to show me how you had to watch for the dots. You know, and you never forget that. He told me that was going to happen. He says, "I'm going to ruin you for life." I said, "Why?" He says, "You're going to get so used to looking for those dots up in the corner that you show these dots first, would say get ready, and then when you saw them again, you switch quick, because you had 2 cameras. Switch quick."
Wow.
And you know, for years and years and years, I don't go to movies much anymore, but for years I always see those dots up in the corner. But they didn't use a bright light or anything. What they used was carbon. 2 carbons come together, and when they make an arc, like a welding arc,
Yeah. Wow.
that's what made the light in the movies.
Wow.
Well, sometimes they get together like that, and then they'd stick. And that's when the movies would go black. Everybody's
Right.
booing, stick.
Yeah.
And I'd have to open the thing and get those carbons apart.
I think the official name of the movie was People's Theater or something
Yeah,
like
something like
that.
that.
I have a ticket. That's.
Yeah.
Well, I remember your grandfather. I remember Ernie. I remember Ernie O'Neill. We always thought my brothers and I always thought he was Hopalong Cassidy. Because if you ever saw a picture of Ernie O'Neill, he looked just like Bill Boyd. He had white wavy hair, and he looked just like Hopalong Cassidy. That's who we thought he was. But then Tommy was the one that was showing me how to run it. He was running the Comerford or something, wasn't he?
Well, the one in Archibald and the one
Wasn't he doing something?
and Irving up in Carbondale. He was going back and forth. He was.
Yeah. At that one time he was doing something in Scranton.
Oh, he could have been. He could have been.
Yeah.
He was out of the service because he had a bad heart. He couldn't get
Yeah.
in. But he's the only one around that knew the.
So what happened to me was the last night was they got the camera jammed. Well, they were getting old anyway because they were there, I think, since Ernie was there. The camera sprocket started skipping, and then it jammed, and then it jammed between the arcs and caught on fire. I had a fire in there, yellow thick smoke. My sister Marilyn was the ticket taker. So we had to turn the lights on, and she had to give everybody their money back.
Got fire and gal.
But I remember showing the Gone with the Wind there. I was there all night. I think you had eight canisters to show Gone with the Wind.
Did
Boy.
they serve popcorn too? You buy food in there? too?
No, nothing.
Really?
You buy that before you got there. But they were closed on Sundays. But one Sunday, the American Legion got permission. I don't remember what year it was. I was pretty young. They got permission to have the theater open on Sunday for one show for kids. It was only for kids. And I don't even remember what the show was. But I do remember going on a Sunday. It was a big deal. I mean, you couldn't go to the movies on Sunday. They were closed. Blue laws. The bars were supposed to be closed. My dad had a saying though. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings about their religion. My dad had a saying when he was a cop walking the beat. He said, "I noticed the Methodist Church has the best cooks, and the Baptist Church has the best singers, and the Catholic Church has the best backdoor drinkers because they leave church and go right to Steve Pelak's right across the aisle, right across the alley."
Christie, you remember the picture that's in Joy Longer's place now? It's a picture my dad took, and there's a dog there, and he put the thing, "Is my master in there?" It was Sunday. That picture
Oh,
is
the dog sitting on the steps looking at the door. Right? I see that.
yeah.
Well, this isn't about German, but when I was with the liquor board, I had a funny one. I had to check a bar in Shenandoah for being open on election day. They said, "This old lady opens on election day." Somebody complained. So I went there, and the front door was closed, and everything was done. There was a note tacked on there, "Closed for election day. Use Sunday door and back." So I took the note. I took that right off and took it to the office the next day and turned it in. I said to the boss, "How do you have to see it?" The boss took it out and put that on her bulletin board. "Closed for election day. Use Sunday door in the back." I don't know what else to tell you, Bruce.
Who else was on the police force with you when you were there? Who do you remember?
Tommy Walsh and
How do you get his name, Two Gun?
that was Garrity.
My grandmother said you used to call him Two Gun Walsh.
No, not Tommy Walsh.
No?
No, that was Francis Garrity.
Oh, my
He went
grandmother-
after. He was mad at somebody. He went after somebody. They called him Two Gun Garrity.
My grandmother always said Two Gun Walsh. I don't know.
Do you remember that? You must have remembered that. Yeah. Francis Garrity. That's Jack Garrity's father. He was called Two Gun Garrity because he went after some guy that he was mad at in town. He was going to kill him.
What'd you carry back then? 38?
38, yeah.
Yeah.
38 special. It's funny how you got to be a cop in those days. But you know what? I thought most of the cops that I knew turned out to be good cops.
You didn't have to go to school, right? You
No
just became
schooling.
a cop.
They walked up to me. They needed a police chief, and I was working on construction. I was a heavy equipment operator, and we were shut down. In fact, we had just finished the Dyeberry Dam. I did all that road grading on the Dyeberry Dam, and we closed down in October. And I was walking down the street in German one day, and Tom Evans was the president of the council, and he stopped me. He says, "How would you like to be the police chief?" I said, "I don't want to be the police chief." He says, "Well, you were in the Army." I said, "Yeah." He says, "You know how to handle firearms?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "I know you're good with your fists because I heard about you, and I had you in school." He says, "Why don't you be the police chief? We need one." I said, "I don't think so." I went home and mentioned it to my dad. He says, "Jesus, you don't want that job. That's an old man's job. He said, you don't want that job." So I thought about it. My wife wanted me to take it. She said, "Well, you'll be home. You'll be right here in town." I said, "Well, I'll take it until spring, but in spring I'm going to Idaho on a construction job." Well, my dad says, "You'll get bit by the police dog." And he was right. By the end of the winter, I was so gung-ho being a cop that I didn't want to give it up for $50 a week.
Wow.
6 days a week, $50 a week.
$50, wow.
$50 a week. And when I went to liquor board, I thought I got a big raise. I went from I started out at $2,400 a year in German, and I got it up to $4,000 before I left. And I went to liquor board for $6,800. I thought, boy, I got a big raise. Well, I had to live in Allentown, away from home, and you had to have a 9-month probation, so I couldn't move the family. So I wasn't making any more money at all.
Anybody else have any questions you'd like to ask?
Do you remember my grandmother, Stella?
Stella, yeah,
Lizard?
yeah.
Yeah, what do you remember about her?
Well, she was the oldest
resident.
oldest person in town. I know that.
Yeah.
But I think she was a Sunday school teacher too.
She
I
might
think-
have been. I don't know if for
Stella
that.
Vizard. I think we had her when I first started going to Sunday school.
Oh yeah.
I think so.
Could
You'd
be.
have to ask the girls maybe.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
But I remember Stella.
Did she have borders? Or
I don't remember
like
the borders, but she did have before my time. I wasn't born to
Rather
35.
than living over the lane, my father,
Who's your father?
Walter Vizard, the fire chief.
Oh yeah, Mousy.
Mousy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that going back too far? Or?
I don't remember them living over the
They
lane.
lived right
no.
over the crust from the Artesians, and the house finally flooded out when the river came up in that.
Oh no, I was born in 35.
How do you get that name, Mousy?
I don't know. He was a nice, quiet guy, I guess.
He was, well, as he always used to say, he had 4 daughters and 1 wife, and they were all bigger than him. So we
Yeah.
were all taller than him. And he had the smallest feet in the house. He only wore size 9 shoes, and we all wore 10s, 11s, and 12s.
Yeah, Mousy Vizard. And his buddy was my father-in-law, Smoky Melon. And
Yes. I was young, really young.
yeah, and I asked Eddie Mellon one time, I says, why do they call you Smokey? Just because you're the captain of the fire company? He says, no, your father gave me that name. He said, the Block of Blazes was on fire on Rushbrook Street. That was a big apartment building. It's still there.
Still there.
They
yeah.
keep remodeling it. But the Block of Blazes was on fire. And there was thick smoke, and my dad was the cop then, and he was, watching traffic. And he looked up and he says, who the hell's Boots? Who's that up there on that ladder? All I see is Boots. And he says, oh, it's Eddie Mellon. So when he came down, he was coughing his brains out, but he had a cigarette in his mouth at the same time, And my dad says, you look pretty smoky there, Mellon. Because Eddie Mellon was his part-time cop. They were buddies, And so my dad started calling him Smokey, and boy, it stuck. After that, a lot of people forgot it was Eddie Mellon. They called him Smoky Mellon.
You remember my Aunt Elizabeth?
Yes,
She worked in Allen's.
yes. And she worked someplace else one time too.
She ended
Elizabeth
up
Vizard.
working at, not RCI, the place, the
Yes.
2 names before
Down,
that.
down the Chrysler
Daystrom.
one. Daystrom.
Daystrom.
She worked a day. I remember her
She
working at
went
Daystrom.
from Allen's to Daystrom.
Yeah.
I don't know where she worked before Allen's, so if she worked at Allen's. maybe
Allen's
that-
store had a lot of employees off and on.
Mhm,
Girls coming out of high school worked there.
mhm. I went in there one time and she was there.
I played Santa Claus over there a couple of years.
Oh, did you?
I probably sat on your lap.
Probably. My mother got me that big job. I was a
My
police
Aunt
chief
Margaret
too.
worked there.
Yeah, Margaret worked there. She worked with my mother.
And he the same age as Paul Green, or older, or
No,
younger?
Paul Green's older than me.
He was
Or he
older.
was older, yeah. He was Dorothy's age. So I think
Oh,
Paul,
Dorothy. And Dorothy's passed away.
Dorothy passed away, yeah. Jackie's still living. She lives in Lancaster.
Another?
Yeah, she'll be, let me see. She'll be 90 this year.
I'm gonna say, yeah.
They live only a couple of houses down the street from me.
Yeah, yeah, they did. They lived in
Jackie Battle.
the pink house.
Mm-hmm. I was in the yard many times there.
Well, Paul lived quite a while too. 'Cause
Paul
where's he-
Battle?
Yeah, he wasn't good when he died. He was out of it, He didn't know
Take
anything.
care of his ashes. As a
Yeah.
kid.
You remember Eddie Battle?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
He used to work with my grandfather in the mines.
yeah. I knew Eddie Battle good. That was Paul's father. Nice guy, Eddie Battle.
Yeah, he worked with my grandfather. Laying track in the mines.
I got in a fight with Stanley Klum one time. I think we were in about 9th grade. Up right in front of the old school. And Eddie Battle came there and he's standing there watching her. And he's saying, give him a left, Dick. Use your left, Dick. Use your left. Hit him with the right. It was like Kids were always fighting, but nobody got hurt. Not too much.
I remember your mother
Oh, yeah.
down the church.
I was just
Coming
saying,
from
too bad,
Rummelsville.
too bad she couldn't be here now because she was sharp. She could
Yeah.
remember stuff.
Oh, she was always working. I was smoking.
Oh, she was always worked all my life. She was
Yeah.
working.
And she was always.
Well, my
at
dad
those
was always a
garage
cop and
sales
never made any money. They don't get like they do today. The chief here in town now gets about $54,000 a year, I think, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And benefits.
And benefits.
I had no retirement, no benefits, none. In fact, they didn't even pay my Social Security. When I signed up for Social Security, the lady said, "Well, we have 5 years here where you didn't work." I was like, "Hell, I've been working since I was 14." She said, "We got 5 years." She gave me the 5 years. The 5 years I was a police chief. They didn't take any Social Security.
Oh, it's very good.
That's how good a job that was. And I worked. I walked the beats. I found more doors open. I found Billy Moore's drugstore open one night because he had an automatic night light, but he was standing on the porch talking to somebody, and he closed the door and didn't bother to turn that light. I found the post office open twice. Friedman's store opened 9 times 1 year. Friedman's gas station. And the first couple of times I called Milton and got him out of bed to come over and check, because I thought somebody broke in. Well, somebody did break in later on. I caught a burglar in there too. I won't mention his name because his family's in town, but
What was the worst crime you ever seen in town? No murders, was it?
no, we didn't have any murders. The ones that kind of were the saddest was an old guy over at East German, used to be a cop back, I think when my dad was a cop. He was one of those part-timers. Trying to remember his name. He took his shotgun for a walk down the railroad tracks and leaned on it and shot himself.
Accident?
No, he killed himself.
Oh,
I forgot what his name was now.
Wouldn't be Otto, would it?
Otto, yeah. Joe Otto.
I saw an article in the paper.
Joe Otto. That's what he did. He blew a hole right in his... When I got stuff like that, I called the state police to come up and investigate it. I had a lady that died. Dr. Blows came to me one night. I was eating my supper, and he came over. He says, "I think you got a problem." He says, I went to a lady, he says, and she died right on her couch, and she's all bruises. I think she was beaten. So I arrested her husband, and he was protesting, no. Well, I got Dr. Cabasco, who was the coroner, and he came up and he said, "Meet me at what's the name of that big undertaker in Archibald?"
Harrison.
Harrison, yeah, meet me at Harrison's. He says, "We'll do an autopsy." So when we did, he says, "This is all," he says, "find out if she was a drinker." Because he says, "This woman has 7 natural causes of death here. Her liver, her kidneys, her spleen, her blood, everything was shot." He says, she was only, I think, 38.
So she wasn't beaten?
She wasn't beaten. So I went to the liquor store, which was still here in town. And he says, "Well, she buys a bottle of whiskey about once a day." So what she was drinking, she just sat home and drank herself to death. And I had her poor husband. In fact, I even took him to state police barracks and fingerprinted. I had to back off of that one. That's when the state police were in Peckville.
I met a very unique character in the Eindrug parking lot. He was a former mailman. He said he lost his legs because of frostbite. Sitting by himself, and he had pictures of his wife, like one of those movie stars, Betty Grable type hair. Same name as a contractor in Carbondale. Mellon?
Jimmy Gillen?
Gillen.
Jimmy Gillen.
Yeah, is he unique or?
Oh, he was unique already.
He was never...
Well, I mean, he was sad to me, sitting in the car and the pictures of the woman.
She was beautiful. Betty Bennett was her name.
Was that it? Yeah.
But he didn't lose his...
sister.
He didn't lose his legs in the military or from
No,
frostbite.
mailman, he said.
Mailman, yeah.
He didn't lose it from frostbite.
No,
either.
sugar.
Diabetes.
Sugar diabetes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
diabetes.
Yes,
and
I
all.
think
Yeah.
he was
He was
very
another
sick.
alcoholic.
Yeah, I worked with
Gillen?
Jimmy Gillen
Gillen
over
was
the
very
post
sick.
office.
And my father talked about him, and he was a
Yeah.
very sick man.
Oh, yeah, he was a rotten person too.
Well, he was sad when I saw him.
Yeah, he was a bad guy.
He was in Sunday school with me. I could tell a lot about him.
I know that one of the biggest, so you mentioned about a big crime. One time we did have a bookie in town. And German was well known from way back my father's days that they never had bookie joints, they never had gambling, and they never had bootlegging, because my dad wouldn't allow it when he was a cop. And I didn't know enough about it, and there was a bar here, Phillips's, it's burnt down now. Phillips's bar, I didn't realize all these wires coming down were all telephone wires. I didn't pay. They're next to my mother's house. I'd be in and out of that house. I never noticed all those wires. I never thought about them. Jimmy Gillen turned them in because he lost a lot of money, and he didn't want to pay them. So he turned them in for bookie joint. So we talked about Tommy Walsh. Well, Tommy Walsh worked over at Dearborn. And I got him one day when he came home from work. I said, get your uniform on. I already had a search warrant, a legitimate search warrant, from Squire Rippon. And we went up to raid the place. Well, even while we were there, the phones were ringing, and Tommy Walsh was taking bets for them, and getting people's names and that. And I got their book. They had a big, thick book. And I arrested them. We closed the place down, and we arrested the husband and the wife there. And they went to court and everything. And then Joe Phillips wanted his book. He called it his Christmas card list. He said, I got to have that back. I said, no way. He says, I got hundreds of dollars owed me in there. I said, you can't. That's
Evidence.
huh?
Evidence.
Evidence, yeah, there you go. Can't think of words sometimes. If that's all evidence, you can't have them back. Well, he hated me for it. Then one day I was walking by his place and he stopped me and he was on the porch and he had a white envelope. He says, I want to give you this. I said, what is it? He said, it's not, just take it. You'll get one every week. He says, we know that you only make $50 or $60 a week. I says, where's it from? He says, well, Keen Egan sent it up. The Egans, they had the bar in Scranton. They lived in German. Keen Egan sent it up for you. I said, what is it? He said, well, take it. I said, no, I'm not going to touch it. Tell me. He said, well, it's $100, and you'll get one every week. I said, you know, Joe, I'll pretend you didn't say that. He said, what do you mean? I said, I'll pretend you didn't say it, because if I thought you were trying to bribe me, I'd yank you right off that porch, and you go right down to the county courthouse where you wouldn't even stop at the magistrates. Well, geez, don't get like that. Keeney said you'd probably take it. I said, you tell Keeney I want to see him. Well, in the meantime, the state police were after Keeney, and he left town. I don't know where he ever went. Never found out where he went. But he left German and never came back. I never heard where he went or what happened to him. But that was one of the biggest jobs we had.
When was that? What year?
It was before I left. I left in '65, so it had to be maybe 63 or 64.
Wasn't the father a judge or something? Judge?
That was his uncle, Mike.
Uncle?
Mike Egan.
No,
So
he
you
would-
said magistrate. You didn't use that word back then,
No.
did you?
No, it was
Justice of the peace?
Justice of the peace, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you say that today, nobody knows what you mean. Those days, they were all the justice of the peace.
Yeah.
But now that, in fact, Squire Rippon told me that when they change it to magistrate, you're going to see us guys that'll be gone. He said they're going to want nothing but lawyers. He says, and then it'll get really crooked. And he was right. He was right. All the magistrates now were lawyers. Except Donnie Yagoski, and he was the crookedest of them all. He was.
You're on film.
I don't
He's
care.
still alive.
He knows it. I told him right to his
Sometimes the
face.
truth hurts.
We had a sign in the liquor control board. Now he was the only one. We had 9 counties that we handled in Wilkes-Barre. There were 9 counties. One was, if you ever have to go to your Goski's office, make sure you take an assistant DA with you, because he threw everything out, everything.
Anybody else have anything? Any questions? Anything else?
I hate to talk too much, but was there a barber shop down at the corner here across from the Episcopal Church?
Yes, that was Bruce's.
Yeah.
Jerry Bruce.
No, my cousin who lived in Germany here, she had an accident swallowing on a necklace or something. So they took her to the barber shop, and he was into medicine.
Well, they could have been, because Gerald Bruce was a pretty good drinker, but he was a good barber. They were all. Old man Griffiths. Griffiths that had the barber shop there in the basement where
Danny Couture.
Danny Couture's was. Old Griffiths, he was half looped off the time.
Was Bruce's barber shop in the house?
No, it was in that big brown building that used to,
It
well,
used to
where
be
Matt
the-
Tice's is now.
Oh, on that side.
Where Matt Tice's is was a big long brown building. There was a store on one side, a candy store, and I think it was a regular store too. I don't remember now. I used to get candy in there. But there was a store on one side and Gerald Bruce's barber shop on the other side. But it was closed half the time. Gerald Bruce's. He wasn't too active.
I think I have record of the candy store.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the guy's name. I knew him too. When I was a kid peddling papers, this guy was only like maybe in his 20s. He was a young guy to have a store like that.
Wasn't Barnabas Carter down that way? Didn't he have a place down there?
Uh,
I think that name rings a bell, being down there on that side of the road.
I don't know that being a business thing. It might have been one time. It was down in that area. That was Barnes Carter.
Talking about stores, your parking lot over here used to be the A&P store.
Yeah, I knew that, yeah. A&P was
And up there where my in-laws lived, that used to be the Acme store.
Oh, your in-law, okay.
It was a grocery store, and it had a lawyer's office on the side. 'Cause in that house, there's 2 living rooms, and they used to be closed off with a door, like all old houses. They had a door for every. Well, my father-in-law, when he bought that place, he tore all those walls out. So the 2 living rooms now are one big one, but there was a lawyer's office and the grocery store, the Acme, and a laundry in the back, because they still had 2 places in the floor in the back room that were in concrete. They're only about this high, where they boiled great big pots on, for doing the laundry. I don't know whose laundry it was, because they knew either. And it was 3 stories. It had an apartment on the 1st floor, 2nd floor, and 3rd floor. But then she had Paul Green come and take the 3rd floor off it. But it had one of those false fronts originally.
Oh, straight up,
Straight up
like the
front.
old Western?
Yeah, like the old
building?
Westerns.
And that's where Debbie's flower shop is now, or
No.
across the street?
It's where Eddie Mellons is. Where I lived, across from the post office.
Okay. All right, so I didn't know the Acme was in there.
Well, the Acme later on moved. The
Yeah.
big Acme was
Yeah.
down there where the Debbie's flower shop is now.
Yeah, then I moved
Yeah.
down
And
there.
across the street from them was the one I told you about, the Big Chief, that was owned by Seltzers. Dave
By
Seltzer.
Seltzers, yeah, that's right, I remember that.
Remember Dave Seltzer and
Oh, I was
Tilly?
always sent down there for groceries, yeah.
Yeah, and the daughter's name was Beverly, but do you remember the son's name? Wasn't it Cashmere or something?
Sherman.
I don't.
Sherman,
Sherman.
there you go. Sherman, wasn't Cashmere, it was Sherman. I knew it was a wacky name.
I have a picture here of the one across the street, the old AMP.
The old AMP.
With Jimmy Rosemore.
Jimmy Rosemary worked, yeah, he
Yeah,
ran it.
yeah.
Yeah. Old Jim Rosemary.
I must have got it here. The picture's probably in the.
There was another gas
They grew up
station I
someplace.
mentioned, the Jimmy Rosemary's gas station.
Oh, yeah.
And next to that was Coleman's. And we had a lot of gas stations. We had a lot of bars. We had 9 bars.
Yeah. You remember the old gas stations with the globes? They had
Yeah.
there was one in front of Dawson Langman's place. When they had the meat market, there was a gas pump there. And we have a picture of that.
That's the guy I was trying to remember was in a wheelbarrow drunk. They were wheeling Dawson Langman. Dawson Langman it was.
He was in a
Where was that
wheelbarrow.
part?
Huh?
He was in a
Where-
wheelbarrow.
Yeah, it was the
right
day
on the
that the
corner
Germans
up from the window.
gave up the Second World War.
Yeah.
And they were having a
Where
parade in
Langwood
town, and a lot of guys
store.
were drinking. They
Gas
going all
pump.
they were walking on the street with bottles and drinking, having a good time and hollering. And somebody was wheeling Dawson Langman in a wheelbarrow because he was loaded. And I remember they used to have the shows over in the high school, up on the stage in the high school there. They'd have, you guys probably remember some of them. The musicals they would have and everything. Of course, Bruce recreated some of them, but in those days they were able to do dark face. and
Dark
everything,
faces and everything, yeah.
because Floyd Battenberg was good at it.
We call them minstrels.
Minstrel, yeah. Floyd Battenberg was good at it. He could do it. One time Billy Moore talked me into they were doing one about portraits. They had these big frames made, and they had people in costume for famous people, and I was Prince Valiant. I had a wig like this. I was only maybe 8th grade or 9th grade or something. And you just sit there perfectly still, and they had this frame. They'd show the frame, and then the stage would go dark, and they'd change to somebody else, you know. They had a lot going on. My mother and Ellen Badger. Anybody remember Ellen?
I remember the Badger name, but I don't remember Ellen, no.
Ellen Badger. They live where Donna Stevens lives now, or Donna
Down Stack.
Yeah.
Stackel. That's where they live.
Yeah.
The father, the old man, was a lawyer. But there was their son was Billy Badger,
That's the name I remember.
and their daughter was Ellen Badger, and she's a gorgeous redhead. And she and my mother played her mother. They had them get on a train in Archville, and then get off the train in German over at the D&H station. And they had the movie cameras, the old black and white movie, and they made a whole film out of the thing. And they were all dressed in the old days. They had the parasols and the big hats and the long dresses.
Who made the film and where is it at now?
I don't know. I don't know who made it. I was only.
Peckville.
Huh?
We had a lady in Blakely. She was known as a movie queen, and she came home and they filmed her, made a movie out of that. Her father was a doctor down there in Blakely.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of what this thing was sort of like.
Yeah.
It was a movie queen coming home, and
I
they
would
made
like
it.
to see that. I have the one from Peckville on my computer, but I don't have the one from German yet.
I wonder what became of it. It was pretty long. I remember my dad. Well, it was back when my dad was still a police chief, so it had to be in the 40s, early 40s. But I remember my brother Carl, my dad had to take him out because my mother was fighting with one of the guys, but she was hitting the guy with the parasol. And Carl was, I don't know, maybe 3 years old, and he saw his mother up there having a fight, and he started screaming and crying. My dad had to take him out.
Took him out?
So he had to take him out of the, no, he had to carry him out. He had to carry him out of the auditorium.
That was very interesting.
Anything else?
Well, that was
Anybody else
good.
have any questions?
Oh, that was good. That was
Anything
good.
else you
Just
can
a
think of?
little- I
Not
can't
offhand.
quite remember that far.
How about when you were young, as far as traveling, did you, I mean, you had cars back then.
Yeah, Lancaster.
So
We made a
you traveled
mistake
down to
today.
Lancaster. And
Yeah. It
was
how
an
about
all-day
like
trip.
amusement parks or lakes, did you go?
Well, let me see. We went to Lake Idlewild a lot when I was little. In fact, I fell in Lake Idlewild. And my dad had to jump in and save me, and he was already dressed to go home.
Oh,
No.
And I remember they took me home. I remember they put me in a mustard bath because I was frozen and it was cold up there.
you fell out of a boat or off the?
Nah, my brother Eric, he was kind of a reckless type guy. And there was this a bobber or something out in the water, and he couldn't reach. He had a stick trying to reach it, so he says, "I'll hold you by the belt and you reach it." So I'm reaching out like that, and he let go of me. Just like he talked me into jumping off the porch roof of the sun parlor of this house over here, sun porch. He would jump off and roll. And I jumped off and just landed flat and broke the metatarsals in both my feet. I was flat-footed the rest of my life. I had to take Dr. Cooney had me doing rolls with a rolling pin and marbles and everything else, trying to strengthen them. He was always getting me in trouble.
Do you remember the doctors in town, Roderick? And
Yeah, Dr. Roderick, Dr. Cooney was in Mayfield. We did a lot in Sherman.
Yeah.
And Dr.
Mulgrew?
Muthart. Dr. Muthart.
Oh, he was from Carbondale later.
No,
wasn't he?
well, he was from here though when I was a kid. Because we woke up one night. My mother had a big grand piano in the living room because my mother was a concert pianist when she was young, and she was also a soprano. She sang in. Well, you probably heard her singing in church. You go to the Episcopal Church, my mother.
Yeah, your mother, Mary.
Yeah.
Mary, yes.
Yeah, she was
Oh,
a
yes.
soprano.
Oh, yes, I heard her sing.
And,
Yes, she sang. She came
One
to
night,
choir.
we all woke up. We were kids, and we woke up, and my mother went downstairs, and Dr. Muthart was playing her piano, because he came in to check on me because I had strep throat, and he just looked down your throat with the flashlight, and I was asleep. I don't remember him being there. So he went downstairs and he sat down, and started playing the piano, because you didn't lock your doors. Dr. Muthart.
Where was his place at?
His place was down at the bottom of, across from where Kennedy is now. That empty lot that's there, the big lot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was a gray house. I remember that gray house. I think it was white trim.
Across from Kennedy's?
Across from Kennedy's. Yeah, that empty lot.
How did I know? That like Kennedy's the beer?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Matt Tice's then.
How
Though.
did, that was Kay Obermiller that lived down there. But
Past K or Obermiller's, the house next door. It was a double house.
Still there. There's a gray house there.
Gray house. It's
Yeah.
still there. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Gray house, and I think it had white trim then. And somebody that we know lived in the other half. And who the heck was that now? Yeah.
Yeah, I knew all the people that went to that church.
Hmm?
I knew all the people that went to that church, even
Oh, yeah.
Walter.
Oh, yeah.
And you had Dr. Roderick.
I was an acolyte.
You were in that way?
You had Dr. Roderick, and then you had Dr. Blows came in later.
Yeah, it was
And then
later.
Finnegan was,
Finnegan was a
he was a
dentist.
He was
Yeah.
a dentist.
And we had Dr. Casey.
Dr. Holmes. Yeah,
Dr. Casey. I think it was one of the guys.
For a short while, my mother's brother,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think he was one of the guys that had the hamburger joint in the first place.
No, it was just two brothers, Ken and Teddy.
Yeah,
My
okay.
grandmother had to sell
Where was his
Dr.
place
Holmes that property, and they had to take that
Um,
outhouse
his
out.
place was right here. Who was there late? Who's there now? It's all boarded up, isn't it? No, that's Muldoon's. That was another bar, Muldoon's.
bar, yeah.
I think it's with the liquor store, or the insurance thing is now, Walatica?
Ladika?
That was
I
I think so.
that was Dr. Holmes.
Yeah, you're
Casey,
right.
Dr.
You're
Casey was right here on,
Where Santa Claus's was. No?
right here next, a couple doors down from here.
Oh,
Trying to remember the name of the people that were in there after that.
needless to say, I wasn't his customer. I was.
Yeah. Well, he checked me one time for Boy Scout camp. Dr. Casey. The girls were crazy about him. He was a young, good-looking doctor.
Anything else? Anybody else got any questions?
Oh, yeah, it was-
No, I would just want to know if you remembered being the projection and stuff with my
Oh, definitely.
brothers.
Absolutely.
When did Frank Constantine start becoming a projectionist? Because he did the movies at the drive-in.
I don't know.
You know, didn't know.
I knew he was he did Irving.
He did the
one time, too.
Honesdale, and he did the drive-in movies. I know that. I didn't know if he did anything in town.
I was the last one, and I was still in high school, so it had to be before '53.
Yeah, it had to be, yeah.
I come down to Loretta's house every night after with the cash box.
Okay, well,
that was-
thank you, appreciate it.
Very much, it's very
We
interesting.
got about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours probably.
Over 2 hours.
Really?
Over
Yeah.
2 hours, wow.
We started at 6.
Oh, you're right.
We'd do an hour interview and then we'd have our meeting and
And that's
ended
it.
up going an hour